Yeah, so you mentioned about this fines, GDPR has been there for a while. So, what's your take on, are these fines or penalties really collected from these companies who are breaking the laws? Because I recently read a Tech Radar article that not a lot of fines or penalties have been collected until yet, because there have been a lot of pending cases, and most of the big tech goes away with their lawyers. So, like, what's your take on those fines or penalties? Are they creating that kind of impact of the law, or more severe punishments should be enforced?
Well, I was gonna say I don't know. I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
goes behind the scenes after they
Mm-hmm.
announce big penalties. I know that the reputational damage can be just as bad as the financial damage. I do know that, especially big tech has lots of resources to fight back and to
Yeah.
invest in years long judicial battles. So, do they collect every single penny? I don't know. I know in the US, when there are fines, I do believe that those fines are collected. Um, but they are more difficult to impose in the US. I think the EU does have teeth in their regulations, in their
Mm-hmm.
GDPR, especially to collect their fines. Do they collect it down to the penny? I don't know. I think the reputational damage is just as bad as the financial damage.
So historically, going through all the case studies one does in an MBA program, especially on the legal side of the house, you find quite the opposite, right? Historically in the United States, if you take a look at some of the big car cases where they had exploding gas tanks and all of that, and they would go to court and they would find out that the actuaries and the financiers inside the organization had already calculated out how much money they'd lose if they lost the court case, how much it had to turn down, how much revenue they would keep if they kept the design in place, and they would win in either case. And so you've got organizations that really do think that way. Now, harking back to 2023, just to add fuel to that fire, the only news story bigger than artificial intelligence itself was the nefarious use of artificial intelligence by big tech, all the big tech. And they all had fairness departments. They all had legions of fairness advocates. They all had, big organizations that were meant to prevent this, and collectively they could not. And there's a whole litany of things that big tech did wrong in this space. So it's really kind of a weird balance. Like, you may have awards, these large awards, but if you can't follow up, then those behaviors will continue. And the way you look at that is, does that behavior continue? Like, look at all the crazy stuff coming out in New York City and California on those lines. It's hard to say. That's a balance. The end result is that you really need to have teeth. And some of these organizations really do need to have some measures put on them, or else they will just continue to get going. Human nature has not changed since the beginning of time. I'm not very positive on how far human nature has progressed since the history of time. And I have no reason to think otherwise at this point.